Today's podcast, we're excited to have not one, but two guests. His first Just Jeans store in 1970, taking just $37 in the first day of trade. You sponsored the first live telecast of the VFL Grand Final.
So millions of people watched it on television, and our sale just went boom. Shane Warne, bless him.
I love a Warney story.
Jesse goes in, when another girl just jumps into the toilet with him. Connie sees him, goes and opens the bloody door, but he drags her out. And he says, "Oh, thank you very much."
Give it up for the man who first wore the pants at the Just Group, Craig Kimberley, and his son, Jason.
When you get the feedback from teachers, you've changed my life.
No one's ever lucky. I think the only luck you get in life is where you're born, and then you make the rest.
Stick around. This is going to be a good ride. Okay, what have we got? Something special for you
Did you
today?
say okay?
Don't worry about me. You got something special for us?
We
today?
do, man. We've got to crack up. You know what? I feel like it's a full circle moment for both of us as well.
Yeah,
Which
okay.
we'll have to explain.
We'll
after the
explain
fact.
during the pod somewhere.
Yeah.
Correct. There's a bit to unpack there.
And we haven't seen each other for a while either, man. It's all a bit weird today, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure where you've been. Where have you been?
I've been under a rock. I've been underground, man, working on something.
Working on something.
I can't really-
Anything you can reveal?
Nah, not yet, man. Not yet. But
Sounds big.
it's a bit of an end gamer for us, I reckon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Haven't seen you for 10 days. It'd want to be something.
Yeah, and there's going to be another 10 or 20. I'm back under, as soon as this is over, I'm back under the rock, man, until it's done. So
Sounds exciting.
once it evolves a bit further, we'll definitely share it with everyone. But
Yeah. Sounds big. I like it when you go underground and start working on things.
come up with something
Stuff
to
gets
sell.
interesting. Something to sell. Something to take to market.
Yeah, like a service or a product or something.
Love it. All right.
Speaking of products,
Today's going to be a product. Let's get into it.
yeah, man.
Welcome back to Australia's #1 podcast. We are the little fish and we speak to the big fish about town each and every week. We talk business, we talk value, we talk big stories, and today is none bigger, guys.
Huge.
Please like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Turn yourself into a subscriber, please. No one's
Please, come on.
subscribe. Help us. Let's get into it, guys. Today's podcast, we're excited to have not one, but two guests. First
Yeah,
time on the
first
Fish
time.
Pod. Our first guest turned a single idea to sell nothing but jeans into a company that he sold for $120 million. Benny, over 20 years ago too.
jeez, what's
Just for a
that?
bit of context.
Oh.
Over 20 years ago. An endeavour that began with opening his first Just Jeans store in 1970, taking just $37 in the first day of
I
trade.
wonder how many pairs of jeans that is. Back
I
there,
don't
probably
know.
2 or 3.
Doesn't sound like many. So there could be a bit in that as well, Ben. 6 months later, one store became 3, and then in 1973, he was voted in as the managing director. In the 30 years that followed, he went on to acquire Jackie E, Peter Alexander, Portman's, before selling the group in 2002. Our second guest inherited his entrepreneurial eye from his father, founding Cool Australia in 2008 after dabbling in circa 12 careers. That sounds interesting. Today, his not-for-profit supplies the environmental education to more than 90% of Aussie schools. It's a big number. Give it up for the man who first wore the pants at the Just Group, Craig Kimberley, and his son, Jason.
Yeah. Let's go, boys. Come in.
Go,
Let's
boys.
do it.
Morning, gentlemen.
How are we?
Morning,
Great to be
gents.
here.
Thanks for coming on.
Great pleasure. Good to see you, Pete, Ben.
Good to see you both.
Oh.
Sorry, the headphones.
Just down the side there, yeah.
Okay.
Double header, Benny. I'm
I
pumped.
know, it's crazy.
Pumped little crowd in today too.
We've got the boss
Our
in.
#1 ticket holder over there. Get off your phone. Your phone's off, mate. Too often. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Great to be here, Pete. Great to be here.
Very excited about this one. We are, like Benny touched on, we used to do a lot of shop fitting. The three of us did a lot of shop fitting, Mark, Ben and myself, and the Just Group was a big part of our everyday life. So opening them quick, getting the shelves stocked for you guys, making money was very important.
Reshuffling head office of a Saturday.
I know. So there's a deep connection there. But Craig, Jace, can we start back where it all began? Where was the idea born? Jeans? And how did it come to be?
Well, basically, just go back. I left school when I was 17 and went into into retailing then, and I can remember we even had Amco jeans as before currency changed at £2 9 and 6.
Wow.
So that's the first part I can remember about jeans, and so we had I was working in this big retail company in the city, and all of a sudden when I was 21, they went broke.
Yep.
And then after they went broke, I had an offer of a couple of jobs, one to go to Glow Weave, which sold same, and one to go to A1, which was making women's jeans. So they wanted to start a menswear division. So at 21 or 22, I went over there and started a men's division, doing a menswear range. I had my first overseas trip when I was about 24, just after we had Jace, our first son, Connie and I, and I did a fact-finding trip, and I basically built that business up there and worked with a team there selling A1 thoroughbreds around Australia. And then when I was about 29, I was in San Francisco and saw the first Gap shop. So I saw the first Gap shop, and that was like it was a guy by the name of Fisher started Gap in America, and he was real estate, but he had this old garage. He didn't know what to do with it, and he started selling 45s and second-hand Levi's. Had Mad Music, American Pie, Janis Joplin, all that time in the late 60s, early 70s. Came back to Australia, tried to talk Myers into going into it, different people I knew going into it. They ended up, our family decided, my brother and my wife's sister Chrissy, they decided to come in with me, and we started opening our first Just Jeans store. And that opened in Chapel Street. As you said, Pete, we took $37 the first day, and we're on our way.
You're on your way. So
We're on our way.
back from the States, you were like, these jeans are a thing.
Yep, it was really, I think at the time there was like, in Australia there was probably about 1.5 million suits sold in Australia and 2 or 3 million pair of jeans. Yep. And then within 5 years, the jeans market went to about 15, 20 million pairs, and men's suits went from 1.5, 2 million suits to 500,000 suits. So the change of clothing in Australia, we went from being quite stitched up and tailored to very casual, and jeans was a big part of that.
So you pioneered, you were on that wave and sort of pioneered that first wave
That
of
transition of...
brought the jeans to the people, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, it did, and Levi's and Lee, they're all their own brands. But then what happened was we started to do our own brand of Just Jeans, where of course there's much better margin.
Yes.
But originally, when we opened the first few stores, it was Levi, Lee, Blues Union, Yakka, also those sort of brands. But listen, we saw the Gold Coast there, we kicked in the middle, and the market liked it. We got some good publicity. Chrissy got a great article in the Herald that got a lot of momentum, and it was just one step in front of the other. Never took any money out, kept the money in the business. Cash flow is very important to pay your accounts, because then you could get more stock if you paid your accounts quickly. And next minute, 10, 20 stores were on our way, and we're running with the boom that was happening in the lifestyle that the world was going through.
Yeah, how amazing is that? So you're in business with your family, you're in business with your brother?
Yep, and brother-in-law, and my wife came into it at that stage too.
Correct. So how was that sell? It sounded like you tried to approach a few different people.
Yep.
They said...
No, they said
Craig,
it wouldn't
I
work.
don't think you're on anything here.
They said it wouldn't work, and Connie came up with the word Just Jeans, which...
I was going to ask,
I
was going to ask how that came about.
She did that,
Connie.
and it just evolved. But we had a fantastic team as we built it, and of course then we, Mark Walkley came into the fitting out with you guys, and they worked with us, a team. But it doesn't work unless you got everyone working on the thing. We had very good product people, we had good finance manager, we had good people doing our fit out, we had good agency doing our advertising, we had logistics, resources with the latest styles that people want, we had the creativity. So we had all the bits in the middle, in the outside, I guess. In the middle, we had this thing ticking along, and I just loved it. I was very terribly lucky that I found something I loved early in life. I wasn't doing it for money or anything. I just lucky I found something I liked and I was okay at it, and just basically the cheerleader.
Was it the jeans that you liked, or the business side, the retail side, and just selling the product? Could it have been
both sides.
t-shirts?
I like the clothing and the fashion, the jeans and the tops, but also I love the bottom line. The biggest turn on was making the profit. If you want a good orgasm, it was making a good profit every month. So we had to get the margin, we had to control the expenses, but you had to take a punt too. And we made a lot of mistakes, but I never forget Rupert Murdoch used to say, he doesn't mind someone making a mistake, but don't make it twice. And we made some big mistakes, which we can talk about in our life, but we had some great people helping us. I mean, one good example would be Levi's. I mean, Levi's, I think one year we sold over 500,000 pair of Levi's in Australia and New Zealand. I mean, that's a lot of pair of one brand's jeans. And of course, we had a great relationship with them, and they used to give us funding and they gave us some finance. So it's all about managing cash flow, getting the margin, and not spending much on yourself. I remember other people open jeans shop. Next minute, they got the new speedboat, they got the Mercedes car, they got all the flash things, but they weren't there 3 years later. Yeah. So there's a lot of things about manage it, and and I wasn't much of an accountant, and I didn't get my HSC at school, so I was a dropout. But I knew enough about the numbers to how important they were.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's Mark Walkley. You just mentioned him then. We're in business with him. He did your shop fit outs. He's a big one in managing your cash flow, knowing your numbers.
Keeping your tyres pumped up.
Forecasting it, appreciating that cash flow. Jace, what's your recollection of all this ride? You were there early on, probably memory not great early, but when did, as a kid running around after Dad doing jeans, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, certainly my first experience or memories of it was sitting at the kitchen table and Mum hand painting the swing tags to go on the jeans. You'd have the price ticket and then a thing called the swing tag, which was a bit of a flash sort of a ticket, which had some colours and the name of the store. So I remember Mum hand painting them. So I would have been 3 and sitting at the kitchen table and probably not being much of a help, being more of a nuisance, and watching her do those. So I remember Mum doing that. I also remember the debate about what the brand was going to be called, and Dad had this thing about Luke's jeans. I want to call it Luke's jeans. I don't know where the idea came from, and Mum said, God, Luke's jeans, it's very much specific, and who the hell's Luke? And this debate was raging on. Mum said, why don't you call it Just Jeans? Just Jeans, that's what you want to sell. Yeah. And that was the start of the name. So certainly as a young kid, there was lots of conversations about business at the table. I think I knew more about stock turns and margins at 5 than any kid would know in their whole life. So that was a fascinating upbringing. And Mum and Dad worked really hard in those early years. Like Friday nights, they'd be in the stores. Saturday mornings, they'd be in the stores. So, it was good. So Mum and Dad were quite strict on, 8 o'clock bedtime. So I could cut loose with a babysitter and stay up till 9 o'clock on the Friday night, which was a bit of a spoil for me. Dash off into bed and pretend I was asleep when they came home.
Yeah. So you saw firsthand how hard your parents worked to get this off the ground. Sounds like it was constant. At the kitchen table, nights, weekends.
A lot of passion and a lot of travels. I mean, Dad mentioned before, which Mum likes to remind him, he celebrated my birth by going on an 8-week business trip 3 days later. Yeah. So Mum said, imagine doing that today. But, that was the time, and that was the passion and the commitment to the business to do the best and find what was new and bring it back to the Australian market and adapt it for the Aussie audience.
Yeah, amazing.
Can we back over the brand? Because I think we're sort of just fleetingly moving past.
It's amazing. The big brand, how they come to be.
Connie just came up
and it was nearly Luke's jeans.
Nearly Luke's jeans. Because I would argue, we'll never know, but like Luke's jeans, we're not sitting here today if it was Luke's jeans. The power of brand, you probably know better than anyone, Craig. And sounds like in hindsight you've figured this out a little bit.
Great. I mean, Cotton On's a great brand. Levi's a great brand.
Yeah. The Just Jeans brand is...
Gap is a great brand. I mean, and we put money into marketing very early in the go. So we were advertising on 3XY, on No Wrinkles Fly. Chase wouldn't even remember this, or you guys wouldn't. And then eventually we went on to television, and we were always investing in the brand. And probably I always took that as insurance, probably overspent. because right at the end when we sold the business, they cut the advertising budget by 2/3, and it sort of still ran well for 2 or 3 years. It's a different world we live in today.
Well, that's probably, again, on the back of the strength of the brand, right? So you're running Luke's Jeans, and that's not really resonating with the people. But like Just Jeans and that advertising that you did earlier, which I think we're going to touch on some of the moves that you got, pioneer moves that you guys made. But I feel like that's a big part to. Or that just created so much value around that Just Jeans brand that these guys bought. It followed on for 3 years.
You've got to have all the spokes coming in at one. The brands are main in the middle, but then if you don't do the other things right, it doesn't work.
Pointless, yeah.
It's like that in all businesses. You can have the idea, but you've got to make sure that you got the good staff selling with the competition, the stores, the financial control, the stock turns. You're getting the margin. You can pay your bills. The marketing's right. Later in life, as we got into IT and your systems, that they're all right, and you put the money into those things. You got to have all these things working well to make the thing happen in any business. I guess, and we put a lot of concentration onto all those areas.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, a lot.
Strong
all
is
the
your
balls
weakest
in
link.
the air all the time, and you just got to be catchy them, throw them up, or hold them, and decide what you're going to do. But and the market moves quickly. Government change rules on duty. All of a sudden, 350,000 people are out of work when Gough Whitlam took all the taxes off clothing and textiles in Australia. That was a huge thing.
Yeah.
And that's really why shopping centres in Australia can charge such high rents over the last 30 or 40 years, because the retailers could afford to pay more because their margins were greater, because it was all the clothing is made in third world countries. Yeah. And 97% of the clothing sold in Australia, I think, is made in Asia. Yeah. There's no industry in Australia at all. But you can say the same with Bunnings, I guess, too.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a huge conversation.
Yeah, I didn't even realise that. Did you know that?
What's that?
97% of clothing.
Who makes clothing in Australia? Do you know?
That makes sense. I don't know who does.
R.M. Williams make boots in Adelaide. I think there's one place in Queensland doing some dry as a bone stuff. But bugger all.
Yeah. With the loving like the PR piece and getting your brand out there. 1977, I think you had about 33 stores. You sponsored the first live telecast of the VFL Grand Final, side by side with CUB, which JC informs me. So that sounds like a big play.
Who was playing?
It was
Collingwood North. It was a draw.
Huge. It was a draw. It was huge. Ron Casey, who was running Channel 7 at the time, and Lou Richards was his main call with Michael Williamson. And they'd always been wanting to do it, and they said to the AFL they would never do it unless it was Alan Aylett was president.
Yeah.
After Sir Maurice Natham, Alan Aylett was the president, Eric McCutcheon had gone, and Jack Hamilton was the general manager of the VFL at that stage. If they sold out, they would telecast it. Well, they sold out because of the people who were playing by midweek. And they said to Ron Casey, you have it. He spoke to Harold Mitchell, who was one of the major media buyers, and we were one of his clients. And they said, you can have it if you can get it sponsored. So Harold rang me up straight away. He said, do you want half this gig? Yeah. And I immediately said, I think I said, I'll ring you back in 10 minutes. Spoke to a couple of people and directors, whatever, came back, and we said yes, and CUB took the other. So we basically sponsored the first grand final ever with CUB. And I'll never forget the next week, we got hundreds of letters from people in hospitals and all around Victoria. They thank you so much, because they'd never been able to see a grand final. There was 100,000 people. These people had never seen it. So millions of people watched it on television, and our sales just went boom through the roof. From there, it was all PR. Although we had 3 or 4 ads in it, but it was really what it did to position the company, to a whole new another level.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So when you were weighing up whether to do it or not, was it a big call? Are we talking about substantial money?
It was, but we had the money and we could do it, and it was a big call. But I was sort of person that would like to do things. I think it's going to be good for the company. Like a bit of risk.
Yeah.
Like a bit of risk. You're going to have a bit of risk and excitement in your life. So fucking boring if you don't.
Yeah, spot on. Spot on. I wouldn't mind going. Jace has let me in on a couple of things. We've got the Melbourne Sports Depot here. Was that an acquisition?
Absolute
that took
disaster.
place? Love it. We love disasters here on the pod.
We thought we were so good at one stage, 40 or 50 stores, anything we'd touch it turned to gold, Ego was up here. And we knew the Reeds. It was Wayne Reed who ran the tennis in Melbourne, out of Keong, and his brother, he was in the VRC, forgotten his name, the brother. Anyway, they spoke to us and we decided to buy 40%. Yes. We're in there, buddy, 6 months. I said, there's no margin, it's not working. We've got to buy a 60% because we would then control the board and we're going to tell them what to do. So we had put more money in. and so we had 60%. 2 years later, we sold it back for $1. So we probably did about $1.5 million, and we sold it back for $1. But the rest of the business was so good we didn't even notice it. Yeah. And I remember at the same time that the Lowy family bought into Channel 10. Oh, they owned a lot of shopping centres, Westfield. They bought into Channel 10. It was an absolute disaster like this. And they put 300 or 400 million into that and they got out of it. But the rest of their business was so good that it didn't even affect them. Like it didn't affect us. So we just kept on building the business and buying some other businesses. So that was a complete stuff up, but we learned from it. But yeah, there you go.
Was there a time... early on, once those 3 stores, was there a time when you thought it wasn't going to happen, or pretty much out of the gate? Because it was it 3 stores in the first 6 months, and then it was just
we had
on.
3 or 4 stores, but we thought 3 or 4 or 5 stores might see us out. But it was amazing. We just had the traction. The market was going with us. We had plenty of competition.
Who were the competitors?
General Pants.
Oh, yeah.
And that's still there today. I think it's been bought and sold a few times. But there was Pete McKenzie down at Mentone, down at Frankston. There was Rob Palmer had Jag. There were other brands around, but we had in those days it was all like Levis and Lee and Bush Union and Yakka. And we just putting one foot in front of the other. We had some good staff we put on. They were motivated. We ran it very tight with stock, and it just kept happening. And then that was only Victoria. We didn't move into state, which is another story, until we had about 30 or 40 stores here, wasn't it, Jason?
Yeah.
So what was moving in? So obviously you did move into state.
We did it basically by acquisition. We went into Sydney. We opened 2 stores. They were going nowhere. One in Hunt Street and one over the North Sydney. They're going nowhere. And there was a guy, the Solomons, who had 12 stores. So I went and saw him and I said, "Do you want to sell your business?" And he said, "No." I said, "Well, if you don't sell your business, we're going to open next door to you or everywhere in Sydney. We're going to cut the money prices by 20% on you." Brutal. I said, "We'll give you $1 million." We spoke to the bank who were prepared to lend us $1 million. I went back the next day and he said, "Okay, deal's done. I'll sell it for $1 million, provided you employ my son as a manager for New South Wales." So we did that, and it was Greg Solomon. So we bought it. We did a huge closing down sale of that business. It went on television. Harold Mitchell did it, and Lionel Hunt and these guys from Macy's Williams. So we bought that business, closed it down, and we got a lot of more stock of their brands and put it all on. And then we did an opening sale with our brand, and we paid the $1 million back in 3 or 4 months. We generated $1 million of cash flow in the closing down and the reopening. Just geez. Of course, then what we could afford to go on television, because like McDonald's, you can't. Until they get at least a dozen stores around an area, they don't make any money. But once they can afford to go onto television and marketing, and then all of a sudden those 12 stores, we opened another 30 stores around them. We just dominated New South Wales.
Wow, I'm hearing that PR play about taking over that business, making the money from the closing down sale, but you televise, you scream from the rooftops, these guys are shutting and we're opening.
Well, that's how we got into Southland, into Northland and Chadstone. Walsh's had bought out Leviathan, and they went broke, and we were trying to, the receiver had it, and we said, we'll buy all the stock, that you've got in Walsh's in the city, in the city, and Chadstone North around their stores. And we bought all that stock. We did a huge closing down sale, but we got the leases for Northland and Chadstone and Southland, and that allowed us to. We did a big closing down sale, generated a lot of cash, went on television, and then opened them with our other shops in Chapel Street and Puckle Street and Centre Road, Bentley. We're in the centres then, and that was enough for us to go on television in Melbourne. So that's how we expanded, really, Melbourne too.
Yeah, getting your name out there. That's good.
I was going to ask, was there ever any thought of going back to the States? So when you were over there, you saw General Pants, and I think they had, who else did
Gap.
they? Gap. Sorry, Gap. Did you ever consider taking Just Jeans into the States?
Yeah, I don't know. We obviously talked about it, but most of them haven't done well. Apart Cotton On's doing well now, but really most people, David Jones, a lot of people went to the States, and Country Road lost 26 million, but a lot of people went to the States and didn't make it. So yeah. It's very, very tough. But we did go to New Zealand. We opened with one store, ended up with 42 stores in New Zealand. Glennis, one of our top managers, went over there, kicked ass, kicked down doors, got us good leases, and we ended up making more money in New Zealand. Like I think over there we made about 10 or 11 cents, where in Australia made 8 or 9 cents a dollar. So the great thing about New Zealand was there was no penalty rates on weekend. The rents were cheaper, but the prices were a bit more. The gross margin wasn't quite as good, but that was a bit of overseas, but that was it.
Yeah, there you go. Jace, when did you start working in the stores? How did that evolve?
Well, I started
being surrounded by it so much.
And how many pairs of jeans did you have in
a lot. So Dad would go on his overseas buying trips and come back with the latest. So myself and my brother and my sister would always be decked out with the latest purple pants, paisley shirts. Not uncommon to see me wearing a cravat to a kid's party. So we'd have all the latest outfits. But I started going in with Dad to work in the school holidays probably when I was about 6 or 7, and I'd go and run around the warehouse. This was back in the days when it was in Melbourne, and go and play with all the guys there, notionally under the guise of picking a bit of stock and doing some work. So I was very much engaged early on, and just loved the whole process. There was the computer, which was about about the size of a quarter of half a squash court, this huge thing, and you'd feed in all these paper documents and all these things that get spat out the other end, and it was like a contraption from a Roald Dahl book, and it was amazing. I was just fascinated with this ticketing machine and this computer, which would do all the printouts. So I was just part of the furniture from a very young age, and loved going there. And when I got a bit older, I think I was desperate to work in the stores. I think you legally had to be 15 or to work in the shops. So I think I started when I was about 13, and I'd work out what the best rates were. Was I a casual? Was I a part-time? I'd do all the calculations.
And go negotiate with the old man.
So I was that guy that actually worked all the rates, and I went, okay, if I work on a casual and work on these hours and get in a couple of Saturdays and Sundays, I can maximise my pay packet. So I was underage and illegal, but claiming the top rates.
Love it. So it sounds like both of you in the numbers, into the bottom line, into maximising the outcomes. Can we talk about, at what time, when are we talking a couple of hundred stores? Because when we're talking about a couple hundred stores, we're really talking about...
Well, I guess...
We're talking about an iconic Australian retail brand.
We basically got Just Jeans up to, I'd say 150, 100...
Was that all private, or were they franchise?
No franchise.
No franchise,
And we didn't own... We owned a bit of real estate in Burke Road, Camberwell, but we bought and sold it. We realised it was a lot better return on running the business than there was in owning real estate. That wasn't where we wanted to go. But I guess when we're around about 150 or something, we found this company in Sydney called JJ's, and then we bought it was 3 old jean stores, a bit different, in 3 garages in Sydney. We got it and revamped it, then started doing a line with their own brand on it. We ended up within 6 or 7 years we had 100 stores of JJ's, and that was sort of a lower demographic than Just Jeans. So Just Jeans was the top end with Levi's and Lee and our own brands, and Edward Jeanson from Japan, and this was a much more cheaper end of cargo pants and jeans and tops, and we'd sell them much cheaper value. It's a bit like one was a Lexus up here for Toyota, and that was the 4-cylinder Toyota down here. So it's a different market, different buying team, different creative, but all the back of house, all the property, all that side was done by as a group together. So that we got great expansion out of that. So it was really that was a second brand to what it is now. I mean, you know, Solly Lou owns the business today and doing a fantastic job. There's about 6 brands here now. The Premier are doing, so it's a different business when we were doing. But that was our introduction of our second brand, and then we bought Jackie E, which is women's fashion, and we revamped that. And these were adding on to the brand instead of being Just Jeans became the Just Group. So,
Yes.
and then Peter Alexander came later, so, you know, that sort of thing.
So JJ's was the first plug-in that
that's
created
right,
the group.
Yeah, we got the name and the idea, and then we revamped it.
And how did you find JJ's over in Adelaide? How did
We
that
know
land
we
on
saw
the
it in
table?
Sydney. It was in Sydney.
Oh, it was in Sydney?
Yeah. Sydney's, you know, it was a great market. They weren't in shopping centres. I think we ended up doing some deals in the shopping centres, completely different. We did try and get into the surfwear because surfwear was also growing very fast at this stage because although we came along, the jeans was very big. I talked about the 70s, and then surfwear got very big late 70s into the 80s, and of course today it's all like Lululemon and Nike and Adidas. They all came later again, lifestyle. So it's all different. It moves on to different lifestyles, and before us it was constructed suits. I mean, you look at a grandfather of the MCG in the late 30s, every man had a hat. If you weren't wearing a hat, they wouldn't let you in the ground. So, and everyone had their Sunday best suit. So it's all evolving, these different lifestyles we're in, and we're into the blue denim, Janis Joplin, American Pie thing, and then the surfwear came in. We tried to get into that, but they wouldn't sell us the brands. They were worried we'd knock them off and that. So although we tried to get into that and try to buy a couple of surf companies and...
Because they were doing jeans as well, right? The old Quicksilvers and stuff.
Their version of jeans.
Or Dickies and
like
all those companies,
type, balloony ones. And of course, surfwear's not as big probably today because it's more the lifestyles of Lululemon, Cotton On, all that, and Nike.
Yeah,
and jeans have stood the test of time.
Yeah, they have.
They're the one out of all of the ones that you just mentioned. They're the only one that's sort of been constant.
But Levi's were in our time were doing about $8 billion US turnover. Today they're doing about 4. And I remember at one stage they were doing 8 and making about 8 or 9 cents. So that's about 8 or 900 million US, and they're around the world. And they were talking about buying Nike, who were doing 3 or 4 billion, but they didn't buy it. The family didn't want to do it. But today Nike are doing 36 billion, probably one of the biggest clothing companies in the world, and they are making about 3 or 4 billion after tax, doing about 14 cents. So it all comes around and goes. And Adidas, their big competition, they're half the size.
Yeah. So it's
and you got Uniqlo coming in. Uniqlo doing about 16 or 17 billion US. Zara, the biggest of those, doing about 25, 26 euro billion. And H&M, and they've had a bad 2 or 3 years. So these people weren't there. Zara and Uniqlo when we were there. So it all evolves and changes. And that's where Cotton On will do so well because they're on to all where it is today. And
they're doing the superstores and the different brands and the breakouts.
Put all 4 or 5 brands all into one,
Yep.
So that was obviously a conscious decision that you were playing up here in this market space, and then you wanted to capture more of the market.
Yeah, we wanted to expand. And
like you said, you had the back end in place to then support these new ventures.
Because we had sold off 30% of the business to private equity, and of course they come in, they always want an out in the end, and that's the reason we floated in the end, and then that's the reason we sold in the end, and whatever. So, I mean, would have loved to stay another few years, but there's a lot of circumstances that you don't. But, it evolved. But listen, we're lucky that we've made enough good decisions against bad decisions. No one's perfect in life, and we've done well, okay, not well, but okay, and the family's all okay.
Yeah, love it. So talk us to us about that float. becoming a public listed company?
Well,
because those requirements,
I would have rather
reporting
today,
requirements.
looking back, I would rather we didn't do it. I would rather we didn't sell. You see, we sold 30% of the business because we had a big tax problem. The tax department took us to court. We won the case, and then it went to the High Court. We lost the case, and we had to come up with a few $1 million very quick. So we basically floated it. And,
who was that? Was that to private investors or individuals?
Private investors, very good people. Maury Coop and George Pappas, Boston Consulting, one of the leading consulting firms in Australia. And a group of those guys got together on the board. That was all. It was very good. But at the end of the day, the private equity, they're only in for a time. They need the money to get out. So if I had our time again, we would have liked to have just kept it in the family, but it was not to be. So stiff ship, but we're happy.
Because this
Yeah, not a bad win.
Yeah. That space that you guys are in, that's evolved so much today, even hasn't it? Online and
And your run was kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was kind of before that online e-commerce wave. But when you sold, it was almost like the very beginning. The wave was just starting.
Well, Peter Alexander were totally a catalogue store. That was before online came, and they just posted out a catalogue. Yeah. And of course, then after we left, they opened stores, and they took it all from a catalogue to be online. Of course, that's a great plus for the Premier Group today to have a brand, and they're doing such a great margins, great business, doing about 350, 400 million, and making, which is terrific.
And that's Peter Alexander?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Nothing to do with us, but I just observe it from...
Do you know how much the Just Group's doing, how much they're turning over?
Oh, I think about 1.2, 1.4. I'm not quite sure. The whole group is doing that, and they're making terrific profits. They had another good result this year. Solly without doubt's the best retailer in Australia. He just works at it all the time, and he's a bit younger than me, but he's not that young, but he just obviously loves it, and he's got a very, very, very good mind for it.
Amazing. So you sold out circa 150 million?
Oh, I think it was about 120 or something,
120,
with stock coming back and everything, but something like that.
Yeah.
But our family owns 66% of it.
Okay, yeah, gotcha.
And did the other 34, did that go at the same, did they sell at the same
went.
time? So
It
the
all
whole
went.
100 went,
Yeah.
It all went. So what was life like after that? What did you go and do?
Oh, well, I
You and the
got
family?
It was too early. I was not ready to hang up my boots, I must say.
So how old would you have been then?
Oh, 60.
Okay, yeah.
I say 59, but Connie reminds me it's 60. So I got involved in a business in Adelaide. That was a disaster. Anyway, got good tax losses out of it. We're still using today. And I got involved with another company, Bull Illusion. I'm involved in Husk today, just as advisor.
Yeah.
I'm 81, mate. I'm fucking old.
Yeah,
you
gee,
81?
Don't bloody look it, mate.
No way.
Oh, well,
You look after yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
You both are proud Old South supporters, is that fair to say?
Very true.
You corrupted him.
My gorgeous JC is keener than me, and I didn't think that was possible. Because our grandfather supported them, and
Yes.
my mum and dad and auntie, I'm the third, Jason's the fourth, and his grandkids are the fifth generation. So you can't say we're jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, the family's been following them since the 1870s. So, we're well ensconced in the old South Melbourne and obviously embraced Sydney, and couldn't be happier with the boys and the team, what they've become over the last 40 years.
Yeah, amazing. It sounds, there's a lot there, like you were president for a bit, first life member as an administrator. Thanks, Joe.
In the AFL or in South? Yeah, awesome.
My life member
Sydney.
of the AFL and the Sydney Swans. As Jay said, I was the only Hall of Famer who's not a player or a coach.
Yeah. And Dad was the youngest ever VFL president, and then it became AFL. And I think Eddie Maguire might have beaten by a few months.
Yeah, I had to talk to Eddie about that.
Talk to Eddie. Almost a dead heat for youngest ever.
Yeah, about 33, 34.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that was all fun.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Have you got a good story there, Ray?
How'd
Well,
you get elected? How'd you get elected, Dad?
Well,
What
how
was
we
the-
get
Yeah,
elected?
tell us.
Thanks, Jason.
Well, a group of people approached me in the late 1970s, 75, and said, you know, there's a descent of the poor. We're at the bottom of the ladder. We need a new group of committee men, and would you like to lead a group against the guys who are on the committee? So at any rate, we're a very sad part of the Connie's of my life is that we'd lost Marcus, our son, in March of that year in 75. So it was only about 6 months after that, and I just sort of threw myself into it because. I got involved in doing this, and Ron Joseph was advising us. Anyway, it looked like the election would go half the old team and half of the new team. So then we decided that we would, but also one of our key players was going to go to another club. And which was a bit of a problem. All the supporters upset about that. So then we decided to talk to this key player, and I was told to take a brown paper bag to the rib room at the Southern Cross, and as we were chatting away, I moved that brown bag over, and it came to be that person stayed at the club, and I said, well, if you announce in the paper tomorrow, you'll stay if our committee, if everyone votes for us. So I got a reporter down, and he did that, and then we won the election 9-0 because all the supporters loved the player. So that's how we did it.
Whatever it
I
takes.
was all of a sudden I was there. I sat Graham John, the coach, the first day, got Ian Stewart in as the coach, and all of a sudden we realised that the club didn't have any money. So then we, anyway, we went on, and it was horrendous. I mean, I nearly split the marriage and everything. It was unbelievable time. Every bastard's ringing on the phone in the middle of the night. Why is so-and-so playing an half-back flank? And all this sort of crap. It was unbelievable. Because those days there was no mobile phones or anything. So anyway, we got them to Sydney, and I was on the committee, off the committee on, and I was their representative in Sydney and Melbourne, and I went on, and I was involved in the VFL and the commission for on and off for quite a few years, but a good part of my life.
Yeah.
And Dad's quite modest about his involvement. When he mentioned Mum wasn't that happy about it, there was no money in the club, so Dad went guarantor on a loan for the club and was not aware of how broke they were at the time. And he became aware when he got a phone call from Mum when she had a sheriff knocking on the door, coming to take the furniture, the beds and the TV as collateral against a failed loan at the club. So you can understand why Mum got a bit shitty on the whole thing. And the South Melbourne players, I mean, Tony Morwood tells a great story, who worked with Just Jeans for many years. When the club couldn't pay the players had come down to Just Jeans to collect their pay each month, and Dad would pay them from Just Jeans when the club couldn't afford to pay them. So he essentially funded the whole playing list for a couple of years there.
Wow, that's interesting stuff, isn't it?
Sounds like they might not still be around today.
I'm not sure if that was a salary cap, soft cap, how that'd be treated today.
Amazing stories, though, that you don't hear, that probably don't really see the light of day. But
these are all confidential stories.
Of course,
We'll keep them dark.
No one listens to our podcast anyway, fortunately. But like you said, Benny, you wonder if people like that aren't around in those early times, how things play out.
Yeah. 100%. Like you think about what the Sydney Swans means to Sydney, but the AFL as a whole, and what the AFL means. You know, it's crazy how things pan out. Hey, Jace, I've got to ask, man. It's been burning.
Go.
Pete said in the intro, he said 12 different job or 12 different career or things that you sort of tried. I guess my big question is, the obvious thing for you to do would have gone down to follow your dad and work at Just Jeans, becoming an executive there, being a part of all that stuff. Obviously, that's not what you wanted to do. And I love, for the people at home, we try and talk to the people on site or in cubicles and stuff that aren't sure, whether they can take, they're too scared to take the risk or whatever. You've gone and tried 12. I'm going to rattle them off because I did some digging and I found them. So you've been in fashion, photography, retail warehousing, stockbroking, wholesale, building, fruit picking, cattle herding, roof repairs. You've been a restaurateur, and we know you're an accomplished author. So I guess my questions of why did you try so many things, and is that something that you would advise for the people at home that's they're trying to figure out what they're doing? Because it sounds like you've gone a long way through life, which I always like as well, trying to figure out, and I just kept trying stuff, and eventually I found something. And it sounds like with the cool kids, you've you've found your calling as well, but it took all of those
How'd
things.
you get there?
Yeah, talk us through that, man.
Well, I really like to challenge myself, and something that I always looked at, the kids that I went to school with, no one at school wanted to be a real estate agent, but the kids who didn't go so well at school did real estate, and after 30 years, guess what? You get pretty good at it. No disrespect to the real estate agents in the world. But I thought that was such a sort of a dreary path for one thing. So I just really loved the challenge of something new. So whether it was wholesaling with Country Road, working in their warehouse, moving to Sydney, working with Country Road for a few years, and I'd do something for sort of 3 or 4 years, and I'd feel like I'd got a really good handle on it, maybe not necessarily mastered it, but done it to a level of satisfaction where I thought, okay, I can do this, what's next? So I always like to give myself something that's hard to do and not that straightforward. So to me, it's more about taking things on and challenging yourself to find a bit about who you are, whether it's climbing mountains in the Andes, or going to Antarctica, or hiking up to Everest Base Camp, or doing the Kokoda track with a bunch of mates. These different sort of mental and physical challenges, and also in a work sense. So when you start a new industry, you've got to start from the bottom and learn about it. So renovating houses, so what's the order of the building process, who do you need to get in, and you sort of work out how that goes after a while. Or hospitality, what are the secrets of that, your peak times, and losing money on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and how you got to make it on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I suppose I was just never satisfied with getting into a rut and having a career that was sort of a bit samey and really mastering one thing. So I didn't really find I loved all the things I did, but my real passion, in education, which I didn't discover till I was 40. So I feel as though I've given myself a Jace Kimberley MBA for the first 40 years of my life, with all the different influences and the great people around me and the fantastic experiences that, mum and dad exposed me to. So when we went on holidays, it wasn't, sipping margaritas on a boat in the south of France. It was hiking through Nepal, or, travelling through India, or camping out on the Dal Lakes in India, or on safari in Africa, or all these really different sort of interesting things, or doing a 3-week drive through Central Australia from Alice Springs to Broome to Darwin. So all of those trips, I think, really informed who I was, and I think you're a real product of, you are who you are because of where you were when. And I think also having a brother who was born with brain damage and had a challenging life. I was always very much into defending him, speaking up for the underdog. I mean, I'd cross the street to challenge someone who stared at him because he'd have the crash helmet on and the caliper boots, and it was a sort of a bit old school, early 70s kid, back when people were, called a retard or a spaz or whatever. So I was very defensive in that, and I think that really set up a big part of who I am, and speaking up for the little guy, and making sure everyone has a fair crack.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was going to ask where that drive for the education side came from. But yeah, that's incredible.
Can I just say, Jace is such an inquiring mind. He's got an unbelievable mind, and he's a real adventurer.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that he sort of saved a guy on Mount Mackenzie up in North America in the snow, a guy up there. He hiked with Peter Hillary down in the Antarctica down there, and camped out down the Antarctica, dropped in by a Russian plane down there with guys, and wrote a book on it. I mean, he is really look back at his life, and he's a man of adventure. And he's just been up in the last week up at north of Australia in Haggerson Island, fishing and mud crabbing, and with his mates and his 2 best mates. And he's so loyal. He thinks it all through. Different to me. We're all different fucking people in this world, and the way we do it. I'm a bit more structured perhaps than him, but he's just got this individuality which everyone loves so much, and he endears himself to everyone. But he's a bit left sometimes, but that's okay.
Left is good.
Love it, Jace.
You'll probably argue with me about that anyway.
Left of what would be my question.
Can we learn, Jace? Can we learn some more about Cool Australia? Like you said, you found your passion at 40 after all of those different things, and believe it or not, I'm low 40s myself, and I was the same. it took me until just before 40 to actually, I tried that many things, and then eventually I did the Benny Drowan MBA sort of thing. But you found Cool Australia. That's your passion, man. Can you tell us about that?
Because it's a fantastic initiative,
it's
Jace.
insane.
Yeah.
So at the time I was, adventure photographer, author. I'm not one on putting labels on myself, but you could probably say that about me. And I'd had published a book about my adventures around Australia. I had sort of exhibitions. I published a book about my travels in Antarctica, and had a show in New York and in LA, and a couple in Australia. And I was researching this book that I was writing about my Antarctic adventures, and I was reading about fishermen who were coming into the Southern Ocean and netting krill by the boatload, and the krill was being used as an additive to put into pellets that were being used to feed cattle that were grazing on cleared Amazonian rainforest, and the beef was being used for burgers to sell to North America, who I thought possibly didn't need another burger. And I thought, geez, out of sight, out of mind, this is just so wrong on every level, but someone's making a quid and no one knows about it. So I thought, gee whiz, I thought I knew about this stuff, but as it turned out, not nearly as much as I would have liked to. So I did some further research and found out that there's thousands of things like this going on around the world. And I thought, geez, we're just living in an absolute, a haze of a lack of knowledge generally in society about these things. And I asked some teacher mates of mine, I said, what's going on around, climate change was still a bit, controversial back then in 2007, and, is it or isn't it? The Al Gore film had just come out, the Stern report had just come out that said the longer we take to act, the more it's going to cost us. And I spoke to teachers and they said, listen, it's very much, don't do this, don't do that. By the way, 10 easy tips to save the planet. I said, well, fuck me. I said, that couldn't be more bloody disengaging if you tried. So I thought there's an opportunity here to educate kids, but more importantly, to build up teachers' confidence, competencies and skills to talk about what's going on in the real world and bring that into the classroom. And not just for the greenie teacher, but make it everybody's business. So I thought, how can we speak in plain English with a sense of humour and engage teachers to upskill them, to give them the confidence to teach these lessons? So I thought, well, whatever we do, we need to have a focus on maths and English and science, because they're the key subject areas. I want to have bums on seats. How can we make sustainability, biodiversity, energy, water, waste, climate change, how can we make that everybody's business and make it as easy as possible so the whole school can engage in this? So having no idea about education and an absolute muppet when it comes to technology, I decided to start an online education platform.
Of course.
Now, I'd be a 0 out of 100 on both of those, and I've educated myself along the way. And you hear people talk about you've got to get the right people around you. Well, this is was imperative, because I know the overall of what we're doing, but I don't know the actual nuts and bolts of how everything sort of works in a digital and education sense. So I've got a great gang that work and support me there, with my right-hand woman, Thea Stanier, who's been with me for about 10 years, and she's now the CEO of the place. We met at a science teachers conference, and I was had my Antarctica book there, which has got a photo of my mate nude in Antarctica, and that caught her eye. She said, this is a bit weird for a science teachers conference. What's this bloke on about? So we struck up a friendship, and I asked her to come and work with me. So the great people. And then we got the online thing set up back in 2007 with one employee, and I sent out a copy of my Australia book and my Antarctica book to every school librarian in Victoria, with a letter of introduction saying, we reckon we're onto something here. We can help your teachers embed all these core areas, water, waste, energy, climate change, biodiversity, into your school curriculum. And within 3 months, we had 5,000 teachers sign up to the site. And, fast forward, 14 years, we've now got 200,000 educators in Australia, of which 25,000 are parents, which came on board during COVID, a lot of home learning. And we bring the real world into the heart of the curriculum. We've expanded our remit from having a focus on environmental science to include the social and the economic pillars of sustainability. So it's so satisfying to look back on what's happened. But when you get the feedback from teachers, you've changed my life. You've changed my outlook on teaching. I was about to quit, but now I'm going to stay. This is fantastic. You've saved my career. So getting all those sort of bits of feedback, and we asked teachers, how has this impacted you? And we were astounded. The first bits of research we did, 90% of teachers said, I have changed my view of this subject.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids are similar sort of
So you're
responses.
educating the teachers
We're educating
who then
teachers,
educate the kids.
Because a lot of people get stuck with the loudest noises they hear in the media or the last thing they heard on the radio or what, Uncle Barry said at Christmas lunch. I mean, everyone's entitled to opinion, but some opinions are worth more than others, So we're very much science-driven, we're factually based, and we bring the real world into the classroom, work with documentary filmmakers, and we tell the stories of what's happening in the world, but in year-level specific, subject-specific classroom lessons so that every teacher can have a crack at helping their kids understand how the world works.
That is
How amazing
wild,
is that?
man.
So teachers are, coming back to you going, it was uninspiring. I was doing things I wasn't maybe passionate about. I was losing my drive. And now you sort of find giving them a why to come to work and learn and teach the future for us.
Yeah, well, you've got to make it interesting. I mean, teachers get a hard time, and I think, every article in newspapers about teaching, 90% of the negative.
Yeah.
This teacher bashing. The teachers are there, they're committed, they've decided not to be work in the money market. They've decided not to work in a business so they could be making a fortune. They're working because they're committed and they care. Yeah. So you're working with a group of engaged individuals. 73% of teachers are female. So it's quite a specific audience you're talking to, and they want to do the right thing, and you talk to them, they talk about my fives, my sixes, my maths kids. Yeah. So they've got a great ownership. So we provide lesson plans, outlines, if you will, so they can structure it to suit the needs of their particular kids, their ability levels, their students. Plus we have lots of great videos and engaging content, and we're not afraid to tackle the hard issues. We've just done some lessons and professional development around consent. Now a lot of people don't want to go near that and pretend it's not happening, and so you can't teach it beyond this level or whatever it might be, but we've done that. It's had enormous success. The kids and the teachers are really hungry for this, and often we get a few noisy voices in the media that don't want to know about it because it challenges their ideology, but we're not ideologically bent in any way. We just want to get out the reality of what's going on, and you can choose to embrace it or you can choose to ignore it, but it's your choice. People talk about, do you believe in climate change? It's not a matter of believing or not. You either understand it or you choose not to. It's a choice. You choose not to understand it. You can pick holes in anything if you want. Cherry pick, what about this? And you said it was going to be dry, now it's wet. You said it was going to be wet, now it's dry. But there's nothing more compelling than the science around climate change. It's compelling as gravity. So it's very clear, and hopefully we haven't left it too late to take action and get informed and do the right thing. The planet will be fine. People talk about save the planet. The planet's going to be here, and creatures that we couldn't have imagined will be here in a million years' time. Our challenge is to make sure we're here and not wrecking the joint, but investing in it and protecting it and having some sort of stewardship for generations to come.
Yeah, I think it's a great initiative. I'm raising kids myself, and the education system is one we've got, one we're working with, but you can't help but think it potentially can get left behind somewhat. Like the world moves very fast. Fashion very fast. Everything's moving so fast. So to have people out there, with that entrepreneurial brain to go, well, how about we share this and share that and bring the kids up to speed. The parents appreciate it. The teachers appreciate it. Great work.
It's like shaping the
People want to know. People
crazy.
want to know. They don't want to be left out. And particularly, kids. I have a conversation with my 18-year-old daughter, and I'm more, probably socially progressive than Dad, and she's way more socially progressive. I learn more from my daughter, Florence, who's doing a VC English exam right now.
Good luck, Florence. Good luck.
G'day, Flo. Good luck.
But imagine my mum and dad, or Connie, my wife's mum and dad. They were so much more conservative than me, and I can't believe how conservative they are. And Jace thinks I'm so conservative, and now his daughter thinks he's conservative. So the world just goes like that. It's unbelievable. The chauvinism for males is disappearing, but some countries, of course, it's as bad as ever. In the free world, we're very bloody lucky. In the Western world we live in, aren't we?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. There's never been a better time to be alive, but there's never been more challenges either,
Yeah, for sure. Guys, we ask a question, and we've got two questions to ask today, which is exciting, but it's a question for our audience that if someone's looking to maybe step off the line, start that business, start that jeans company, start that educational platform, whatever it might be, what advice would you give them if they're umming and ahhing, not sure? Maybe they've been told it won't work a few times, Craig. What advice would you give?
Well, I think there's ideas, just like we saw an idea when we opened the first shop, but I'm very much a believer in testing. And I basically moonlighted for about 8 or 9 months before I left a secure job with a company car to then, because the idea we had 2 or 3 shops by then, and other members of the family, my brother and Connie's sister were sort of running those 2 or 3 shops, and we tested the market and then we decided to go. So I think whatever you're looking at, there's ideas popping up every day today. Yes. I'm very much a believer on testing the market, talking to people, putting a bit of money in. You might get a few thousand, someone in the family lends it to you, or you can raise it and test the idea without risking your life too much on it. I don't think you should be mortgaging your house and doing things like that. I'm very much a believer, because there's new ideas all the time in every sphere we're in Jason's business, online education, in the clothing and fashion industry. It's changed, but I think you've got to test it. And it goes in, you might say, well, I'll try it 3 ways. Then if you can get one line that's going, or there's a bit of fruit on one tree, start going down that, drop the others, but prepared to admit to your mistake. The worst thing is hanging on to something that's obviously not working.
Flogging a dead
it's just
horse.
bleeding cash. If it's bleeding cash and not working, that's not good enough, because no one, you've got to. So I'm very much jump onto where the lines, you can see it. It might be completely different to the idea you started with, but then you do it bit by bit. You might advertise, you might not advertise. Every industry got different models that do different things. Where you're going to make your money in that. So
test it, figure it out,
and talk to people, look at it, get online, see how other people are doing, see if might be someone in Canada doing something. Today you're very lucky with the internet. You can go on and look at ideas and things, and it might work in Australia. It might explode, or it might be it's just not up to the where we are, or what area, how much, or whatever.
So creep down the road as far as you can, without potentially giving up your job.
That's
mortgaging
right.
your house.
Moonlight, try it out, just like you're with
Side
this podcast.
hustle.
You're testing it out. You're making mistakes as you go, or you say, "Oh God, we should go more over there," and then there's a bit more there, and that wasn't such a good idea over there. Just keep following where the success is, and where the potential and the money. We do live in a capitalist society. You've got to make money. That's what generates our whole society. Government, they get all this taxes and then they disperse it out to everyone. Thank goodness we got mining in the country, because, out in West Australia, we didn't have that. We wouldn't, the taxes they pay, we wouldn't have it to give to less fortunate people. So it's all a matter of jumping onto things.
The old minimal viable product, Benny.
MVP, absolutely.
Sneak it out there. Jace, what are your thoughts? Anything to add to that? Jace the Adventurer?
Yeah, look, I would just really, I suppose, I think, stay curious is really important. And I think sort of to Dad's point, but slightly different, is listening to your audience and don't presume you've got all the answers. I mean, unless you're, Apple and you come up with some amazing design and go, I don't care what, people don't know what they want because I know they want this. I mean, that's a very rare business that can do that. So I think you need to put out whatever it is, whether it's, for example, our online lessons, we always do, we do research every 18 months and get teachers in and focus groups and talk to them. They go, too text heavy, need more images. I want to have a summary in, 30 seconds. I don't want to be reading for 5 minutes. So all these little things that we constantly listen, update, listen to the feedback. So I think it's really important to be quite, humble and receptive and listening. It still doesn't mean you can't make a call, but it's so critical, I think, not to have too much of a preconceived idea how you're going to get to where you're going. Know where you want to get to, but be open to having a circuitous path, because it's never a linear progression. It's always, what success looks like in your mind is a straight line, going up from the bottom left to the top right of the graph. But the reality is a big swirling mess of lines crossing over and going backwards and forwards through the whole process. So I think you just need to be open to that and always be learning and keep your mind open and be prepared to change. And something Dad's always taught me is be prepared to admit when you're wrong and be really clear about it. And we've got at work, we've got a balls up award, which is a golf ball from an old trophy, a golf trophy, and that goes around from one desk to the other for the person who did the most entertaining stuff up that month. The balls up award, and suffice to say, I win it most months. Probably because I make
sits on your desk,
so you're more daring. sharing.
The ball's up a wood. So, I think it's important. And to make, have a laugh with it. If you make an error, it's not the end of the world. Dad mentioned earlier, just make sure you don't make the same mistake twice. Yeah. So if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying and you're not challenging yourself. So I'd say, look back at, your last 6 months and say, when was the last time I made a mistake? And if you haven't made one, I'd suggest you're not putting your efforts into the right place.
You're not trying hard enough. Yeah. Fantastic. So test it out in the market. Make sure you got a market. Make sure you got a product. But stay curious.
Yep.
And know when you're wrong and admit when you're wrong, and be willing to take it from all sides and head on a path like that.
Yeah, look at ideas. There's so many ideas every day.
What is it? So you know where you want to go, but doesn't matter how you get there.
Don't stress out about the path in between the destination.
No.
Yeah, and enjoy, because. But in most lines of work, but you will never get to the end point. So it's critical to enjoy that whole time again. That people call it, the journey now and all that sort of bullshit. But it's just actually waking up each day and enjoying your life and what you're doing, and it's not getting too caught up in the how and the why of each day. But enjoy each day and treat it like it's your last and get the most out of it is to me the most important thing. And then you actually do it. So if you sort of don't quite get there, or you die on the way, or whatever happens, you've had a great time doing it, and you've got the most out of yourself and your team.
Yeah, well, great advice, and from someone who does go on journeys, Antarctica, things like that. You've learnt that you're enjoying the moment, being present in the moment, enjoying that each day, not so just going, I'm just trying to get to the end or get to the top of the mountain.
Great adventurer.
Yeah, genuinely getting up each day and enjoying it.
But it is, the moment, just us here chatting out, this is all we've got, this moment. What happened yesterday doesn't matter a shit. Who knows what's happening tomorrow? Yeah. Let's make the most of right now.
Yeah, love it. Well, great advice. Benny, any further questions you've got swirling around there?
No, I'm good. Actually,
I've just got I've got a couple of personality grabs. You use them if you like or not. But first of all, it's Peter Allen. Peter Allen was a great Australian entertainer, and he was coming to Australia, and our advertising agency said, would you do an ad for? He said, yeah, if you pay for my mother's airfare to come out because he was singing at the grand final. Oh, yeah. So he was coming out to sing for the grand final, and he got to do the ad. He said, I won $6,000 in a brown paper bag, or I'm not going to do the ad right there and then. So we had to run around, and everyone was going to make the ad. We had to stop and run down the bank and get the bloody $6,000 for him. At the same time, we thought the Swans were having a breakfast that morning, so we also wanted to get him to come and sing at our breakfast before he did the grand final called Australia Home at the grand final. So then we had to get another brown paper bag to give him for the bloody breakfast. So we gave him another $5,000, my brother and I, and he sang at our bloody breakfast. So that was, and I kept a relationship with him a bit, and we got to know him at Port Douglas, because then one day when they opened the Mirage, Christmas Case opened the Mirage up there, and we had Peter Allen up for dinner at the house. I think Port Douglas and John Farnham Jill were there, because they were big Port Douglas people, always go out fishing on their boat. We went back to the Mirage, and Peter Allen was on the piano. Johnny Farnham was singing. We're all a bit pissed, and then this bird over there started to make eyes at buddy at John, and buddy Jill went over, went bang, and him in the middle of it all. So that was a bit of fun with Peter Allen and up at Port Douglas at the time. The other was Shane Warne. And Shane Warne, bless him.
I love a Warnie story.
And Warnie did some ads for us, and iron-free pants, which we did an ad of throwing an iron down at Flinders out to sea. Yep. We ran that, and it was terribly successful. And Shane used to come to the office, and Graham Dickens, our marketing guy, used to take me to the office. He always liked looking at the girls, Warnie. But anyway, we were having an event up at Port Douglas, another Port Douglas story, and we're all up there, the high achievers from Just Cheese, about 30 staff, about 70 or 80% females, all up at our place at dinner. and the Australian cricket team was training in Cairns. So I thought, oh, God, I'll ring Warnie if you want to come up. So up comes Warnie with half the team. So there's Warnie, about 4 or 5 others cricketers in our house at Port Douglas. We're all there. And the women were just swarming him, and they're writing and their lipstick on his shirt and brushing past him. At any rate, he wants to have a wee. So he says, where's the toilet? He goes, jumps up the stairs and go in there. Just he goes in, another girl just jumps into the toilet with him, with the door shut, and Connie sees him, goes and opens the bloody door, but he drags her out, and he says, oh, thank you very much for that. and he had his wee. At any rate, the same girl did end up having a night with him that night downtown in the motel, but we had
Sounded very motivated.
Yeah, very motivated. Thank Connie very much for saving him from that girl.
Good on you, Shane.
Very polite.
Yeah, we love him.
Yeah.
How good's that? Some ripper stories there,
Anyway.
Craig. Any more you want to leave us with? Any more that you think we've missed out on today?
Max Walker. I did some American Express ads with Max Walker and Lily, and they really helped the business. They approached us to do some ads there, and it's amazing. It was like the grand final when we did that telecast, and we got a huge, just general business surging when you get linked to, say, Amex with Max and Lily, and that was another good thing that helped the business along. So no, it's all.
That sounds like a bit of advice I'm hearing as well, just for business owners. I'm probably thinking selfishly, but that PR, associating your company with the right people.
Influencers. I think they're called influencers these days, aren't they?
Influencers these days, maybe the right causes, whatever it might be. Getting yourself out there in that way. It sounds like you did it your whole career.
Yeah, well, certainly in the late 70s and early 80s, I think with Harold Mitchell, his agency and Dad, they really understood the power of celebrity earlier. So, Max Walker, Gus Mercurio did the ads about 5 years. If they can fit Gus, they can fit us. He was a big star in the late 70s and early 80s. Peter Allen, whose famous song, When My Baby Smiles at Me, I Go to Rio, he reinterpreted the song. Just Jeans had these hot pastel canvas pants called Peaches for the summer. Yeah, and Peter Allen got up and was on the piano, rips off his shirt to reveal a Just Jeans capped singlet underneath, and he sang, When my baby smiles at me, I go to Just Jeans for my peaches. Whoa, 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 whoa. He completely bastardised that song. I think that was because of the 6 cheeky ones in the brown paper bag.
I've got to ask one more question. I do have one more question. So, when everyone was telling you it was a bad idea, what made you believe? And in your opinion, what was, obviously there's a lot of reasons why it worked. So what made you believe, and why, in your opinion, do you think it worked straight away?
I think that I spoke to people, and my brother and Connie's sister Chrissy, when I talked to them, they were prepared to leave their jobs and give it a go because I had a young family, and I wasn't prepared to let my job go because I had, as I said, a company car and a well-paid job, and I was still doing a trip overseas every year for them, developing their range. So I was very lucky that there was 2 members of the family, and Connie was very supportive of it too, and we're all involved in setting up the first shop and, putting down the seagrass matting and, making the curtains and all that stuff. But there was a test. We were prepared to lose that money if it didn't work. I think we put $4,500 into the business to start with. But that's a very good example of testing. So if it had have fallen over, none of us would have, we wouldn't have lost our house.
The end of the world. Yeah, amazing.
I think that explains it.
Yeah, you still had your job. You were happy to put in what you were happy to lose.
Yeah, I was happy to. Yeah, because I was very conscious of being, conservative.
And do you think timing was the timing?
We're very lucky with the timing.
It was the timing that was sort of.
A lot of people see timing and fuck it up.
Yeah,
we saw the goalpost and we were prepared to kick.
Yeah,
and we loved it. And we liked it. Ours didn't mean anything. Taking money didn't mean anything. It's just getting it going. And Chrissy got some great publicity in the Herald. Well, that kicked it, and then we got another good shop that was found, and it was all little things. Little things ended up making it a good thing.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay.
A good big thing.
And similarly, Ben, I suppose, with the start of Cool, everyone I spoke to about it who had experience in education, everyone said, well, that can't possibly work. How are you going to get, teachers to pick this up? New South Wales, a closed shop, and, it won't be promoted by all the state agencies because they'll be potentially, nervous or jealous of what you might be doing. So we took an approach to recruit teachers one by one, and rather than anyone actually mandating it, so we started out with the books to librarians in the schools in Victoria, and once we got our database going, the word of mouth has been phenomenal, and we also successfully engaged Google. They have an AdWords grant which they give to not-for-profits that if they like the cut of your jib, they'll give you a certain amount of free online advertising to help recruit teachers to your website. So the combination of us having the great story, saving teachers time, upskilling them, engaging them in areas where they otherwise would have been too afraid to go was one of those a great part of our success. And when people would say it can't work, I'd ask them why and make sure we were addressing those reasons why, and make sure we would overcome them and get around them or over them in a significant way, and engaging all the national stakeholders from the key union delegates in each state to the heads of Catholic education. So whilst they weren't endorsing what we were doing necessarily because they couldn't be seen to endorse, or they loved what we were doing, they made sure there was no blockers or barriers for us. So apart from a few politicians in New South Wales getting a bit upset with us a few years ago, and a bit of the aren't too keen on some of our stuff, but it's been a real interesting thing to do, and I think you've got to, those that say you can't, ask them why, and make sure, is that legit or is it just their old mindset? And if it's not their old mindset and there's things to be addressed, make sure you do address them and be aware of them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it's not always just about blocking them out. It's asking them why, and because there could be a valid point there that you do need to address, you do need to cover, get that right, and then keep going on your journey. Yeah,
I'm not into people have success and you hear them go, I wanted to prove this guy wrong, and the more they said I couldn't do it, I go, that just seems moronic to me. I'd be listening. Is there any merit in what they're saying? Because there probably is some merit in your knockers, what they're going to say.
Correct.
And actually listen and pay attention. I think it's really important to listen to your critics, and we've had plenty of them. And it's and when they do criticise you, they do all these things. You go, God, they've got my media talking points, and they go through things. They go, isn't this bad? And you go, oh, I was thinking that was really good. So it's important to listen to your critics. Don't be put off by them, but do listen and pay attention, because they often have some help for you.
And just because they say it, it doesn't make it true or right. And I think that's
for you to figure out.
Yeah, I think that's for people that may not have confidence or risk appetite, and they can get people in their ears, and all of a sudden they think that's the truth. Where the reality is, you just got to gather all the information, listen to it, do your own research, and make your own decisions.
Yeah, and that's sort of testing the product, and then that goes back to what Craig said, isn't it? Testing the product, get the critics in,
find out.
Idea.
Yeah. Don't assume it's not going to work just because someone's told you. Test it and find out.
It's test, refine, advance. Test, refine, advance, all the way.
Write that down, Benny.
Yeah, test, refine, advance. Right. That's the one.
Craig, Jason, thanks so much for your time.
Hey,
really
Pete,
appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having. It's been a treat to be here on Little Fish.
You're a legend.
Guys, please like, share, subscribe. No, good man, Craig. Appreciate your time. Like, share, subscribe. Anyone who's going to get value out of that, please share it. See you at the top.
Woo!